It is a new day today, and WBC welcomes you to this CEO Forum. We're rather humbled and gosh knows grateful for leaders. And there's nothing more important than purposeful CEO leaders like the four you will hear today. It was only 1 week ago that WBC did a remarkable forum with over 1,100 registrants called Rethink and Accelerate Action. The panels were impactful and all the recordings are out. Our May newsletter is out and shows the amazing activity of 73 Women Business Collaborative Organization partners, all working against the 9 action items. As you know, we put out a regular report on boards, and on the women joining boards report is out. We've been averaging 43%. Women are up, and 1/3 of those are women of color. And so grateful. And Gwen Young may share with you the incredible leadership towards our summit with 10 major CEOs that we're honoring of purpose and leadership, and 6 major CEOs, leaders that are trailblazers. And with that, it's all about transparent data, information, and leadership. Our advisory council is 400 strong, and our leaders council grows, as does our men's action called Allies of Her. And with that, we'd like to focus on our initiative that we're doing with Diligent, New York Stock Exchange, Fortune Magazine, and WBC on companies of purpose. And we could not have 4 better role models today if we look at Stax, Comcast, ACLI, and Ardent Mills. And with that, turn that over to our wonderful colleagues, Robert Reiss, CEO Forum. Robert?
Well, thank you, Edie, and very excited to be here because this is really about companies of purpose. And we'll go into data as well, but we have leaders in technology, communications, insurance, and manufacturing. And really what we're going to do is first, the team of Becky over there, Becky Shambaugh, Zeilstra, we're going to do interviews, and then we'll go into a group interview, and then we'll have a summary. So, and all within an hour. It's going to be jam-packed, a lot of fun. But I just want to give you a snapshot of who you'll be hearing from. So Suneera Madhani is the founder and CEO of Stax. Now, Stax is what's called a unicorn. And a unicorn means that it has a valuation of over $1 billion. And considering they just started 7 years ago, and they're now, they are processing payments of over $9 billion. So imagine that impact. And we're also going to hear about what she's done on pay parity is one of the first questions I want to ask her. Then we're going to hear from Steve White, and Steve White, a president at Comcast. And this is a guy who is going to share a lot about what it means to get ahead, how you do it, how you get on boards. And he has one concept called uncompromising. And I urge all of you, by the way, he has a book out with that name. I think there it is, right there. It's fat, although that's the pre-press version. So I have all my notes in it. And then we're going to hear from Susan Neely, and she's the CEO and president of American Council of Life Insurers. And here's what's unique about that. Obviously, insurance is at the center of everything, but really, associations have a unique opportunity to have dramatic impact. So we're going to hear about how you do that from an association perspective. And then finally, our finale is from manufacturing, Dan Dye, who is the CEO of Ardent Mills. Now, if anyone's hearing about, you know, food shortages, supply chain, all of that, well, these guys are so important to us because they are responsible for about 30% of all of the flour in the Americas. But what Dan is going to really talk about a lot also is culture. And I'm proud to say that he was selected by the CEO Forum Group as one of the top 10 cultures in America. So with all of that, welcome aboard. And we'll have a lot of fun here. Let's start with Suneera. So Suneera, when you talk about Stax, you have intentionally made sure that you're able to get pay parity for women. And this is something that you are really leading the front of. Talk about exactly how you're doing that.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you, Edie, for having me on today. This is such a pleasure to be here, and I'm so excited to kick us off today. So just a little bit about Stax. I just want to kind of share a little bit about what we do. We're a payment processing company, and Robert, we're doing 23 billion in payments. And so it has been record growth for us. We're a team of about 300. We are in fintech. So we're a payment processor. We do integrated payments for small business, large business, and SaaS companies. And there isn't a lot of competition. We're competing head to head with companies like Stripe and Square and PayPal, and we are an industry disruptor in many key markets. So that is a little bit about our company background. But why I share that is because I'm in an industry that is very male dominated.
I think she's having connection challenges.
But it was perfect time because it was a pregnant pause on the concept that the industry is very male dominated. So you made that point.
Yes, absolutely. And so while I was presenting my idea to my male bosses, I was not taken seriously. I was not taken seriously because of my age. I was not taken seriously because of just being a woman, right? Not having the air quotes experience, and also being a woman of color. So for me, having women in the workplace and women at the top and women in leadership was always something that was at the forefront because I firsthand experienced the prejudice, the bias, the racism, the sexism, the ageism, all of it. And here we are now with an incredibly strong culture with 300 of the most beautiful humans that I'm lucky to call my team. And how we talk, you asked me specifically about the gender pay gap and how we're bridging parity. Well, first and foremost, we are hiring women in positions and in leadership. Like that's the first piece of it, is to ensure when you look at your organization, do you even have parity in your organization? And I'm proud to say that as a technology organization, it's very tough to do, but we have parity with women and men working in our organization. So it starts with that. Two, I'm gonna say, Robert, nothing bad happens when women make more money. Okay, nothing bad happens. Women actually contribute more to our economy than men do. Men usually are the ones that hold money, while women are the ones that spend money in the economy. And so we want to get money into the hands of women. It is better for the economy. Not only is it better for the economy, it is also better for impact. Women are at the forefront of all of the businesses that women start in any position. Mostly women are altruistic. They're empathetic. They want to create purpose. They want to drive impact. So they're doing it with that lens. And I'm not saying that there are not men that do not drive from that lens. So do not get me wrong in that. But nothing bad happens when women are in leadership and when women make more money. And so what we're doing at Stax is just hiring women, right? Hiring women at the top, hiring women in management positions, and having women in technology, and highlighting these women, making sure that they have support to grow in the organization as well. So I think it definitely starts from the top. And then specifically on pay parity, let's just have pay parity. Why should women be paid 83 cents on the dollar? Like, why is this conversation still happening in 2022? Let's just take a look at our P&L and just say, let's make sure that women are paid equally to men. It is pretty simple. So I don't know. I mean, I'm glad that we're having these panels and all these discussions, but let's just do it already. So that's what we're doing about the pay parity. We're not thinking about it. We just pay women equally.
Great. Becky?
Suneera, thank you so much for joining us, and you've done it. Congratulations, and being a role model for so many men and women around the world here. So, but let's talk about do it, right? Let's talk about, I mean, you have really cultivated a company of purpose at Stax, right? And I think that's a key theme that we're seeing with so many successful organizations. Talk with us about the initiative that you created called Stack Cares, and also the 3 pillars that are embedded in that Stack Cares that have really helped to achieve greater parity and greater inclusion and many other great things.
Absolutely. So Stax Cares is a philanthropic arm of our organization, and we are focused on 3 main pillars. The first being women in business. As a payment technology company, we support women in business. 50% of women of businesses are actually created by women. So we have parity when it comes to starting a business. However, here's where I'm going to shock a few people here. Less than 2% of female founders ever break $1 million in revenue. So although we start businesses, we don't scale them. And when you take a look at the reasons for scaling, it's lack of resources, right? Knowledge from generation to generation is passed on in the good old boys club, right? And there aren't enough resources for women, capital for women. Less than 3% of venture capital last year went to women. Less than 1% of venture capital went to minorities in general. And I'm not talking about women minorities. I'm just talking about minorities. So as much as the dialogue is happening, I'm pretty furious that there needs to be more that needs to get done. So Stax Cares is an initiative specifically from Stax. We've pledged $1 million towards our key pillars. The second one is radical acceptance. So we do believe in diversity, and not the diversity of just looking at what, of what your organization looks like, even diversity in minds. Something that has been so important to us is truly accepting people for who they are. As I became a CEO, I didn't go to CEO school. This is the first time I've started a company. I've scaled it to 100+ million in revenue, 300 employees. I show up with imposter syndrome every single day, and I have a bigger job than the one I had yesterday, right? But there is no such thing as CEO school. And specifically for women, I feel like representation and diversity matters so much. I didn't know, Susan, that I could go build a $1 million business, let alone a $1 billion business. And so I do believe that if there is more representation and radical acceptance of what an authentic CEO looks like. I was telling Edie earlier that I'm not a man in a skirt, right? Nor do I want to be. But for the first half of my career, I was trying to fit in. I was trying to be somebody I wasn't. And that's not when the company was doing amazing. When we actually took off was when I just honed into who I was as a human. I am passionate. I do think business is personal. I love my people. I want to have the best place to work. I want to drive an incredible culture, and profits will come, but profits do not come first. And that was really different for a fintech and a financial services institution. And so I do believe that with radical acceptance, showing up in our authentic self, that you don't need to go to CEO school. And so also part of that, I started a podcast during the pandemic because we all had a little bit more time, right? No commute. And the podcast is called CEO School. So I highly encourage you guys to check out Stax Payments on Instagram, to check out CEO School. You could follow me at Suneera Madhani. So I'm very, very social, which is also not very like the likely CEO to show up and share everything that's happening. So CEO School is a podcast. I interview women who have made it to the 2% club, right? That 2% of women that break the $1 million in revenue. So it's how she built this, but from a femme version. And now I'm so proud to say that it is a top 100 podcast in entrepreneurship in America. We have a community of over 300,000 listeners and community and Instagram followers. And it's just the most powerful thing to see women inspire other women. And that's what I'm all about. And so that's what I do.
Well, that's an awful lot right there. Well, thank you so much. And I love the CEO School. And I'd imagine that you can just go on any social media platform. And if people are interested in checking that out, Suneera?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Well, I'm going to tune in, that's for sure. So thank you so much for that. Now we're going to go to Steve White. Welcome. Wonderful to have you here. Steve, when we talked earlier, you know, Robert and I, we were just amazed and inspired by your early childhood and how, and as we all know, we as humans, we as leaders, a lot of the fabric of our childhood really creates who we are today. Please share with us some of the people, experiences in your life that have impacted you as a human being, but also as a great leader today.
Well, Rebecca, thank you. Robert, thank you. Edie, thank you. I'm so honored to be here with you today. Rebecca, I was set up to be the perfect victim. Single mother who raised 4 boys by herself. She had a marriage license, but did not have a driver's license, had never held a full-time job. But she made the very difficult decision that her 4 little boys deserved better. And she made the difficult decision to leave my father. Her first job, Becky, was cleaning motel rooms. And while most kids were at home on the weekends watching their favorite cartoons, mine was Scooby-Doo. I don't know if there are any other Scooby-Doo fans out here in the audience, but she would take us to these motel rooms, and we would clean motel rooms over the weekend. And I thought she just couldn't find a babysitter, but she was teaching us some very important lessons around hard work, the right attitude, teamwork, commitment. Don't allow your environment to shape your beliefs and how you think about life. And so therefore it helped us focus in a way that although we were very poor, we didn't view ourselves, we were poor. But Rebecca, the most important lesson I learned, and I didn't realize it at the time, was that you have to have a purpose in life. And while my mother had all the odds against her, her purpose in life was to ensure that her 4 little boys turned out to be contributing members of society. It was not about being CEO of a company or to be a professional athlete. Could I raise professional young men and they would make a contribution to society? So those were some of those unique lessons that I learned. And so as a human being, I learned that the way I accomplished things, there were so many people giving me a hand up. So now in every fiber of my body, how do I pay it forward? How do I make a difference for others? Not just people of color, but how do I create a table of prosperity for as many men and women as possible? And then certainly as a leader, and it was difficult at times, particularly as a leader of color, is not to take things too personally. I focused on what is my purpose. And so when decisions were forced upon me or presented to me, I was focused on my purpose. And that's what I learned cleaning motel rooms. That's what I learned growing up difficult and poor. That's what I learned by being raised by a very strong woman who is still with us today, who will be 82 years old in October. And I followed up with her with a very strong wife, Barbita, who has been at my side for almost 30 years.
Wow, what a gift. Your mother is such an inspiration, but had such an impact on you. And now is touching you to touch so many other lives. I mean, that's the purpose is such a true north for individuals, human beings, and organizations. So, and by the way, you should have seen all the chats. A lot of people love Scooby-Doo. So,
all right, I love it. And
yeah.
you know, I love, Becky, the quote I love to share with everyone is the Mark Twain quote. The 2 most important days in your life is the day you're born. The second is you know why. And when you can really hone in on your purpose and why you've been placed on this earth, that gets you through anything, any obstacles that might come your way. So think about that. What is your purpose? Why were you placed on that? Find it. And I promise you, if you stay uncompromising to that, you will live a life of legacy, impact, and success.
Well said, Steve, and so timely in today's new normal. Robert, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, Steve. So you and I have spoken a lot of times, and you have these great ideas on how women move into C-suite positions, get on boards, and the whole thought process and action process. Just share that with everyone, because we have a lot of people who want to do that.
What a great question, Robert. But I'm going to take our audience and I'm going to take a broader lens. I want to think about that question from 3 ways. Number 1, how do you get there? Number 2, how do you stay there? They're 2 different things. Getting there is different than staying there. And then number 3, how do I ensure when I'm done, my time is done, others follow me in a way? So let's first of all talk about how you get there. Everything starts with results in business, not just average results, but going beyond the expectations to deliver results. Number 2, really understand how your company makes money. All of our companies are into this to make money. They have shareholders that have to respond to. So whatever your job is, make sure you have a clear understanding of how it connects to the DNA of the company and how they make money. Number 3, seek mentors. I have more mentors than most people realize, but here's the trick, Robert. Most of them didn't even know they were mentoring me, but I observed leaders that I respected. I watched how they did things, and I included that as part of my strategy and my brain. Certainly you have to know who you are as a person, but you can steal from others as you go along. And then finally, go crazy and support your people. I tell people all the time, the reason I was promoted was because my people promoted me up. I'll share a quick little story. I used to work for AT&T. Comcast took over our cable group, and that's how I ended up joining Comcast 22 years ago. And of the top 50 executives, only 2 made the transition. I was one of 2. And I asked the new bosses at Comcast, why me? And they said, Steve, because your people kept pushing you up. They kept telling us about some of the positive contributions you made. And so that's how you get promoted. Your people push you up. You can't pull yourself up, allow them to push you up. So go crazy in supporting and developing your people. So then once you get there, how do you stay there? Let me start right again with results. How do you make your team better? How do you make your boss better? How do you make your peers better? But just as important, how do you make your team better by delivering outsized results? Everything starts with results. And for me, I try to stay as close as possible to the profit and loss statement, because for me, that was an easy way for me to measure my impact. And therefore, this subjective piece was not in play. Because quite honestly, as a leader of color, I was worried about, would I be evaluated properly? And so therefore, for me, I'm not saying everyone, but for me, staying very close to the P&L was very important, because that leads to number 2, how do you create value? I always love the question. If my 9-year-old son says, Dad, what do you do every day? If I can share with him in 30 to 45 seconds in very clear way how I create value for the organization, I know I'm in the right area. So I would ask all of our listeners, can you clearly answer that question? How do you create value for your organization? Number 3, everything revolves around culture. When you create a great culture, the best people in the organization want to come work for you. And that's how you stay there, because you have the best talent supported by the best culture as you move along. And then finally, how do you go create a legacy? So when you're gone and you're the CEO, how do you ensure other women or other people of color that are following you? That's where you identify men and women that you can pour into individually and collectively. For example, one of the big programs we developed when I was CEO running our Comcast West group was called Leadership Development, where we would bring every leader through 3 days of intensive leadership training right here in Denver to help them develop. So we were focused on the collective group, but I identified about 20 people that I felt in my group could be my successor, not just people of color, not just women, but a broad group, so I could give my CEO the opportunity to select the best talent. And I'm happy to report that my replacement after 11 years as president of Comcast West was an African-American leader who earned the job because I created the opportunity for him to show himself. So it's about getting there, staying there, and then number 3, creating the opportunities for others to follow you. And the last piece I'll add to this, Robert and Rebecca, what drives through all three of those is that important question. Why were you placed on this earth? And if you're doing something that fits with your purpose, I promise you, your ability to have success and climb the ladder and reach the highest levels of organizations are going to be there for you. But it has to be tied to your purpose, because at the end of the day, Robert and Rebecca, I don't work for Comcast. I am chairman and CEO of Steve White Incorporated. Comcast purchases my services. So as much as I can invest and make my company strong, others will want to invest. Others will want to buy my services. And that's how a little kid go from the housing projects of Indianapolis to running an enterprise that was $18 billion in revenue, 30,000 employees, all of the cable operations west of the Mississippi. That does not happen by accident. It happens because I had a clear purpose and there were so many men and women giving me a hand up and not a handout. So somebody better give me an amen in chat, because hopefully that story resonates with someone here. But Robert, I'll turn it back over to you and Rebecca.
Well, I'll tell you, that is super and inspirational. You should look up Steve White and his blogs that he has, a ton of them, which are terrific. And I like how practical it is. So let's go Susan now. So Susan, you are running a major association, and it's not just an association, it's of the top life insurers, and there's about 300 organizations. So you have leverage. Not many people in America have this type of leverage that you have. How are associations really uniquely equipped to drive purpose in a bigger way?
Well, thanks, Robert. My only regret is that we're on Zoom and I couldn't stand up and say amen, hallelujah at the end of Steve's comments, because as we see in the chat, he's inspiring a lot of enthusiasm and agreement with what he just said, and my own included. So let me answer your question this way, building on what Steve said. I 1000% agree with his premise that we all have to follow our purpose. I think that is a very powerful driving force for life, and it's really the way to find satisfaction in life in all things that we do. For me, in my professional work, it is about having an impact and having an impact in the bigger policy space. If we think about the intractable societal problems that we're wrestling with, which are many, and it's easy to be discouraged, my purpose is to tackle those where I feel I have a unique platform, or through the American Council of Life Insurers, we as the life insurance industry have a unique platform to make a difference. Yes, we represent 95% of industry assets, all the major life insurance companies, but what do we do really? It's not sell very fine products. It's providing financial security for people and their families. And if you think about that from a societal issue standpoint, where are the gaps that we need to close as business and also through policy? Women are disadvantaged in their financial security. Suneera's right on. The pay equity gap adds up, not just in terms of less take-home pay, but less time to put money into retirement savings. Women are the predominant caregivers, and they take time out of the workplace to, when they're not earning money or paying into retirement security, and all these things snowball. There are racial equity gaps. The situation I just cited hits Latina and Black women much harder than others. So how do we, as a sector of the US economy that does financial security for a living, tackle that? And I think there's a lot of powerful ways that we're proving. We advance policy aggressively around retirement security. We advance policy aggressively about how to have a national paid family and medical leave program in this country. We're one of the only developed countries that doesn't have one. We don't think that affects women's ability to advance and achieve financial security. I mean, of course it does. And we need a solution to that. And I would argue the private sector can play a very, very important role in that. It doesn't have to be in partnership with government. So we come up with ideas and solutions and take them to the powerful leaders that I'm right across the street from the US Capitol here. I wish I could give you the camera shot. We take those solutions right to them and say, here's how we think we should approach the problem. And then how can we as the life insurance industry, what can we do uniquely to help close the racial wealth gap? We just announced a couple of weeks ago a commitment, unanimous agreement of our board to form a nonprofit affiliate that will allow life insurers, we have huge capital reserves, and how do we take those capital reserves? We invested $7.4 trillion in the US economy last year alone in infrastructure and other things that make this country go. How can we source more opportunities for life insurers to use that powerful investment capital to tackle the affordable housing crisis, which is documented and proven to be at the core of building financial security for individuals and families and building intergenerational wealth. So if we can deal with affordable housing and the ecosystem of needs around it, we can make a measurable difference in a big intractable problem that this country's been talking about for decades and more acutely for the last couple of years. So that's how I think about it. What's my purpose? It's impact. How do we tackle intractable societal problems? And what can we uniquely do? Not just opine, but what can, in this case, the life insurance industry do? And I think the answer is a lot.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Becky?
Susan, thank you so much, Susan, for being here and your purpose and passion and energy around this whole phenomena, which you're doing, in the financial services area and really trying to close so many societal gaps and more. We really appreciate that. I'd love to take it more on a personal path, everyone has a journey, right? And as you've evolved into a very successful individual who's having impact as a leader, executive human being, tell us about your journey and those moments that really help to shape you to some degree. And what advice do you have? Because we have so many people, individuals who are aspiring to be CEOs, leaders, executives, or just to be the best they can be. So as a leader who's a woman, what advice do you also have that you've learned over this course of your journey?
Well, I think Suneera and Steve nailed it. I always use the phrase, be the CEO of you. So start with that. It's about what's your purpose, what works right for you, what's your appropriate balance in terms of work, life, professionalism. Don't wait around for people to tell you you're worthy. Go for it. But also seek out great mentors. As I started my career, there weren't any women mentors. Fortunately, I had men step up and give me good counsel and advice and open doors. And I think that was very, very important. But we need to do that ourselves. Now, for we as women, as we've achieved stature and power, it's not, as Suneera said, you just infiltrate from within and try not to make any waves. You get your place established and you use that platform to make a difference. And I'll tell you a moment when it happened for me that a woman who was in power and influence provided that to me and what an impact it made on me. And it sort of caused me to redouble my commitment to helping others and lifting up other voices. The woman I'm talking about is Condoleezza Rice, National Security Advisor to President Bush. I was in the Bush White House in Homeland Security. We were having a conference call, no Zoom at that time, around a difficult issue, and I made some comment. I was the new person in the circle, and there was a senior man who completely dismissed what I said. Condoleezza Rice said, no, that's not what Susan was saying. This is what Susan was saying. She so validated my right to be in the circle and lifted up my voice and gave me stature for being there and making a contribution. It made such a huge impact on me. And I was fairly well advanced in my career at that time. First of all, I never had a woman in authority who had done that. And it was a very profound reaction. I thought also, gosh, if she wants to run for president, I would march for her now. So for all of us, as Steve said, who have people reporting to you and you want to lift them up, that was my reaction that day. I'll march for this woman if she wants me to. But what has stayed with me now through the years is how critical it is when you have your seat at the table to lift up and make a place for others, because that's how we'll advance the diversity goals we want, and that's how we'll allow other voices to be heard, which will only make us stronger.
Thank you for sharing that story. I just was watching the chat box and so many people were saying amazing experience, impactful, you know, and almost wish we would all do that. I mean, I think it's an extension of seeing our role as a leader to really support and elevate and lift other women, right? So thank you for reinforcing that, Susan. Great story. I'm going to continue on now. We're going to now turn it over to Dan Dye. In the spirit of purposeful organizations, purposeful human beings and leaders, Dan, tell us about your company, Ardent Mills, and how it's really evolved into a purposeful organization in the context of its values and how they really evolved to really shape your leadership principles and your culture.
Well, thanks, Rebecca. And I just really am honored to be here. I'm inspired by all the other speakers, and it's just a privilege to be here. And thanks for all the work that WBC is doing. But, you know, for me, I think culture is just so important. And at Ardent Mills, we're actually a little bit unique. We're a newer company. We started about 8 years ago as a joint venture. And right from the beginning, we saw the importance of culture and had this aspiration of being a people first, values-based company. That was so important to us. And we had this purpose of nourishing what's next. As Robert said, we have the privilege of producing nearly 30% of the flour in the US, and we have facilities in Canada, Puerto Rico. We also have specialty businesses where we're going into gluten-free products and specialty businesses. But through all of that, we're nourishing people. We're nourishing what's next. And that link between food and health and the importance of people's diets, really, you know, focusing on innovation and that future thinking. So from the beginning, we knew we had to have strong values to build a strong culture. And so for us, we established those values right from the beginning. Those values for us are trust, serving, simplicity, and safety. They're just foundational. They're cornerstones for us. And as we continue to evolve as an organization, and as we really looked at part of our 5-year strategy and looking forward, we said, we've got to put the focus on our values. And we took those further though and made them more behavior-based, because I think sometimes words by themselves can get lost a little, and we wanted to make them more behavior-based, more actionable. And we put in place 5 leadership principles, which were just to live our values and then to be others focused versus self-focused. We often live in a self-focused world. We want to be others focused. We talk about clearing the noise, being relentlessly curious and winning the right way, operating with highest standards of ethics and integrity. And then as we continue to evolve, it led one more step into one of our strategic pillars around people. And we developed what we call our promise, which really states that everyone matters. Everyone has a voice. Everyone is valued, and that we're best when we really work together. And we have this mantra, together we make Ardent Mills. And it's really helped us in terms of diversity and inclusion. It's helped us to recognize and reward our people based on their behaviors and how they're living that out. It's allowed us to reinforce the importance of everyone making a difference, and everyone's equal, right? And we talk about gender equity and diversity. This is our way of talking about that in our organization. And we do the metrics on employee engagement, and it's the same for women as it is for men, or minorities are even a bit higher. We look at pay equity, all of those things, because we say that promise, we have to live by it. We can't just talk about it. And it's really been a rallying cry for us, and that statement that everyone matters, and committing to being an organization that really cares for people. And I tell our people all the time that I love them. I care for them so deeply because they're a part, we're all part of this together. And we have this opportunity to work together, and the needs that people are facing. And we've seen in the pandemic, the critical importance of truly caring for people, truly being flexible with them, working with them. We've taken a very hybrid approach to be flexible and help people in whatever state that they're in. And last thing I'd say on this, Rebecca, is that we have seen that our values and our culture has actually drawn people to Ardent Mills. We've had, just in the last couple of years, 5 very senior level leaders. They've all been women. they've come to Ardent Mills as our Chief Growth Officer, our Chief People Officer, our Vice President of Sales, our Head of Transportation Logistics, our Head of Customer Service. And they've come and they would tell you that they came because of our values. And these were people that had other options, but they came to Ardent Mills, and we're excited, not just that they're women. We love bringing that diversity of thought in because our industry has been more male dominated, but they're bringing new perspective. It's bringing greater innovation. So knowing your purpose, having strong values, putting people first, it leads to better and more sustainable outcomes, not just financially, but engagement, customer loyalty, diversity efforts, all of those things, and innovation, and we'll be a better business overall.
Well, thank you for that. And I applaud you, Dan, and your leadership and company for walking the talk on putting people first. I mean, that's the wave of the future successful organization. So I'm going to turn it over to Robert now for one more question before we get into the roundtable. Robert?
Thank you, Becky. So Dan, in addition to everything that's been accomplished at Ardent Mills and the specific practices that you have, there's a word, vulnerability, and you had a personal experience that brought this out. And I think it's great for everyone to understand from a leadership perspective, the role of vulnerability. So talk about what happened. I mean, I'm obviously asking about it with your wife and everything, and tell that story.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. Five years ago or so, my wife was in a life-threatening snowmobile accident, kind of a freak accident, just happened, and we were up in the mountains. She was airlifted to a hospital. She was in critical condition in intensive care for 17 days. I went through extensive rehab for over 2 months for a traumatic brain injury and lung and respiratory issues. And it just was a very, very difficult time. And I learned a lot of things about leadership through that experience, and about myself as leader, and about other people and how we need to come together. And I was away from work for nearly 2 months, and my team just stepped in for me and were there for me. And I saw the importance of saying, hey, I can't be effective in my job right now. I need to be here to help and support my wife. And I remember I wrote a journal entry in a Caring Bridge site, because we were at the point of life and death several times in this journey. And we had a lot of people that wanted to get updates, and we shared that even in the organization. But for the first 100 days of the time from her accident, I wrote a journal entry, and we shared that across Ardent Mills and with our friends and family. And I was just overwhelmed by the care and support, the prayers, the love that my family felt, and seeing the resilience of my wife and how she and then other patients at Craig Hospital, where she was doing her rehabilitation, responded. It just was overwhelming to me. And I saw how you can overcome incredible adversity and how we get stronger in the most difficult times. And it's humbling and inspiring, but I found that just being vulnerable and open with my team and more broadly, it helped me to better empathize with others that are going through challenges. And it helped me to be a better listener. It helped me to better understand that other people sometimes have these personal struggles and challenges. I had been through it myself, and I could empathize more effectively. And I find when we're transparent and open, we can better help and support each other. And I think sometimes as leaders and as a CEO, we feel like we have to have all the answers. We have to help other people when they're need. We do have to do that, but sometimes we need help. And I think in an organization, if you're being vulnerable and willing to listen and learn, it's so important. And it shows how a caring culture organizationally can really be a bridge for people who may have challenges in their personal lives and know that they'll get support at work. And again, the pandemic has heightened this, what I call kind of this merging between our personal and professional lives, and the mental health challenges and strains that people are facing. These are very, very real, and we need to be there to support one another and to lean on each other. And when we're vulnerable and say, hey, can I learn from you? I went through this experience and I learned a lot, and that helped prepare me for the pandemic. And just one last quick anecdote around learning from others. Earlier in my career, I had the opportunity to participate in what was called a reverse mentoring. Steve talked about the importance of mentors, and we mentor others and we are mentored. And this was a case where I was mentored by someone who was more junior than me in the organization and was a woman. And that was an incredible opportunity that helped me better understand and appreciate the challenges of women in the workplace, gave me a chance to be really vulnerable and open in that setting so I could learn and grow as a leader. And we can learn so much from each other, and we learn and grow from the most hard and difficult times. And for me personally, it was a very challenging time, but a time of growth, learning. And man, we all need to be vulnerable. You know, it's no surprise that Brene Brown, who I love, is so well versed and so popular in talking to businesses and all kinds of organizations, talking about vulnerability. And when we're vulnerable, we can be open, transparent, and I think that lends itself to a lot of things we're talking about today that are so important in an organization.
Inspirational. Thank you, and congratulations on building a truly great organization. We're now ready. Becky, you're going to lead the panel discussion.
Wow, that was just fantastic, Robert. So many great stories there. So now we're going to move, as Robert said, into the round table. We're going to invite back, of course, Dan and Suneera, Susan and Steve to join us together and just sort of explore and have a dialogue around maybe just a couple questions in the last few minutes that we have. So welcome back. The first question I have for all of you is, we've been talking a lot about gender equity, diversity, gender parity. Advice do you have for organizations, people on this call today, in terms of what is one or two bold actions or commitments that organizations can take to make this a reality? So we're not having these conversations, you know, in the future. What are a couple, 2 or 3 things that you can recommend that could be, quite frankly, bold and dramatic to really change the corner here?
Well,
Who'd like
I'll
to go
jump in.
first?
Yeah, I'll just jump in and say, I give a huge charge to the women that are listening and participating. Do not be afraid to speak up. Mentor your superior, like Dan talked about, and share. You don't have to shout and screech, just share the points of view that women in the organization may have. And I think that could be helpful. But I also am so excited to be on a panel with men who are doing that as well. And I can tell you, when I sit down with my own, the nominating committee for my board of directors, and the sitting chairman, CEO of a major company who's a man, says, okay, we got to have more women candidates for the board or for officers. Wow, does that open up the conversation? I can say it, but it is very, very helpful to leverage off of his leader, in this case, a he. And so that we've got men on this panel speaking up, it just widens the conversation. It makes it so much easier to achieve all the goals that we know are going to be really important. Having diversity in leadership and officers, and having policies that support work-life balance and things that are important to both males and females, but particularly to women.
Right.
Yeah.
Doing
And
it
Susan,
together. Right.
Susan, if I could just build on that, is say it. Jack Welch often would say, if we're not number 1 or number 2 in a business, we're going to get out of it. So challenge our leaders to say it. Our leader for NBC News came out very boldly and said 50% of the leadership will be women or people of color. He made that commitment broad and said by 2025. So he put a stake in the ground. So when leaders talk in code, that sends the wrong message. But the boldest thing a leader can do is just say it. This is what I'm committed to. This is what I stand for. Hold me accountable. You don't have to get any more fancier than that, Rebecca. It is simply state it.
Right.
Yeah, and I think just following up on Steve's comments, state it and follow up with action. And like Steve said, hold accountable. And I think, you know, we need to really challenge excuses and rationalizations, because that stops progress. People can come up with reasons. I'll give you an example. In the flour milling industry, in the plant operations, in the plant settings, where 80% of our people work in a plant, we do have more of a challenge getting gender diversity, especially. And I will tell you that there's a lot of people that make excuses for that. And they say, you know, hey, we can't get enough candidates, this or that. Well, we've taken a different approach and said, no, we have to be bold. We invested in better locker rooms and facilities. We gave women a voice through various channels. We have a women's ERG called WOW, Women of Wheat, which is all about our women having a voice in the organization and saying, hey, we need women in our mills, in our facilities, and we need to create the environment. And the other thing we've done is challenged our industry. And we've been on panels and spoken at industry events to say we need to be better. And look around these rooms. There's not enough women in the room. And like Steve said, just declare it, state it, and then do something about it.
Thank you for that. Is Suneera still here? I don't see her on the roster here, so she may be joining us here shortly, but I had one more question, and let's just say, look out 5 years from now. And what will organizations look like, right? What will we be doing when we do have gender parity, equity, and really a wide range of diversity that are fully engaged and showing up with their best self? What will organizations look like in terms of that particular vision or future state?
Well, I'll jump in, Rebecca. I think they'll be relevant because think about this. You cannot disrupt yourself if everyone sitting around the table looks the same, acts the same, talks the same. How can you disrupt yourself? So the companies that really value diversity and diversity of thought, gender, ethnic background, those are the ones that will find ways to disrupt themselves. And they will also see the boogeyman that's coming around the corner to kill your business. And so that's why diversity's become so critical. And I know that's what our chairman, Brian Roberts, talks all the time. How do we ensure our company is relevant 25 years from now, 50 years from now? It is about creating a culture where people feel safe and comfortable and having as many diverse thoughts and then having leaders that listen. So I wish I could give you specific numbers, but it really is about being relevant. And I believe that is what really challenged us into action. How do we ensure that this company is relevant 25, 50 years from now? We have to constantly disrupt ourselves, and we have to constantly find ways to stay ahead of the competition. And the only way you do that is you have men and women on your team that feel comfortable speaking their mind.
And I would just say right on, right on. We all know there's nothing worse or more deadly for impact and success than an echo chamber. And how, much more likely are you to have an echo chamber if everybody looks and thinks alike. Well, oh, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Well, we don't need to think about outside the box here. But I'd also say you'll be attracting the best and brightest talent. We already find in these great talent wars, we recruit and we retain because of our commitment to diversity. We have people of all different backgrounds in positions of leadership. And we also are putting a big stake in the ground around tackling some intractable societal problems like the racial wealth gap. And that makes people want to work here, and that makes them want to stay with us. And that's part of your future success, your current and future success as well.
Yeah,
Well said,
I think there's just no question. Gender equity is going to lead to greater innovation as better ideas and different ways of thinking come, as Steve Stead and Susan reiterated, right? If we're all thinking the same way, I'll give you a quick example. We put in place a new position called the Chief Growth Officer. And we brought a woman into that role. She has challenged the ways of doing things. She came from outside of the company. She has led us to new innovation, change, growth in ways I guarantee you we would not be at if we would have filled that job internally or in a way that was similar to the past. We had to be disruptive and so, as Steve's point, stay relevant. And I think in our organizations, you're going to have more engaged workforces overall. You're going to have a stronger, more inclusive culture. Organizations are going to thrive by delivering better success and outcomes when you have, again, a more relevant base of team members and leadership. And you're going to, as has been stated by Susan, attract and retain not just the best women, but people overall and the most diverse people that will come into your organization because the culture welcomes them and they feel that sense and they feel that ability to contribute and to be valued and to make a difference and not to have to put on, hide part of themselves because the culture there doesn't welcome their whole self. And we want to welcome each and every individual and again, create that kind of environment. And I think the outcome is, again, better results, results in every part of your business.
Excellent. Thank you all. We have gained so much from your wisdom and insights and this last roundup for the roundtable. Thank you for giving us that opportunity to hear from you. And now I'm going to turn it over to our colleague, Zeilstra, who's going to do a wrap up for us. Suzette?
Thank you, Becky, and thank you to the panelists for a great learning session. I think everyone listening to today's roundtable would agree that these CEOs drive purpose in their organizations as an extension of their personal values and purpose. We witnessed how the background and experiences of these CEOs made them better leaders, as it was shaped them to lead with empathy, vulnerability, and purpose. And in the case of Dan Dye at Ardent Mills, it gave his leadership team the opportunity to support him through a personal challenge. And he also spoke about reverse mentoring by female employees, helped him be a better leader. So leading with purpose will continue to serve these leaders well and others as they create loyalty from customers and increase attraction and retention from employees during the Great Resignation. A few specific things that came up on how these leaders drive purpose in their organizations. From Stax, we heard that not only are they intentional about pay equity, but they're also intentional about having gender parity across the organization, making sure that they're paid well. And nothing bad happens when women are in leadership and making money. It's good for the economy as women do the spending, and it's good for them to give to charity as they give to charity as well. They gave $1 million pledge to Stax Cares to support women in business and youth in STEM education and radical acceptance. They created a CEO school on top of that. What a great way to help women entrepreneurs, and 3,000 listening to their podcast. From Steve, we learned about how women could get on boards and C-suite by focusing on 3 things: getting there, staying there, and creating a legacy, so that others who will follow when they leave. And this is done by getting those results, building a great team, creating value, and creating a great culture. From Susan, we learned that at ACLI that can have a great impact in the bigger policy space. And their action for impact is truly groundbreaking as they rally an entire industry of 280 members to improve financial security and lives of underrepresented populations through retirement security, national paid leave, racial wealth gap, and through their nonprofit affiliate tackling affordable housing crisis. And at Ardent Mills, we learned again about the importance of culture and being a values-based company, values of trust, serving, safety, and simplicity, and really making them behavior-based, not just words on paper. And Dan also spoke about how his culture is focused on others rather than the self, that everyone matters and they're the best when everyone works together. And employees know at Ardent Mills that the organization cares about them. And some of the bold commitments and actions towards gender parity and diversity, I heard that leaders can simply just say it and then follow up with action and accountability. Make sure that women have a voice in the organization and create an environment where they belong. And for those that do this, they have a real opportunity to influence a male-dominated industry. It is clear that in order to be disruptive and competitive, gender equity, diversity, culture, and purpose are key ingredients to greater innovation. In summary, bringing one's whole self to work is not just limited to employees, but we also saw this is meant for their leaders as well. These CEOs demonstrate that when you live out your values and gain the trust of your employees, treating them with radical inclusivity and loyalty and trust will carry them through these turbulent times. And now I will turn it over to Edie for her final words.
We're totally humbled by the 4 speakers today and changing the life of business for purpose. And if we go back and hope we all re-listen to Stax and the radical acceptance, and to Steve, go crazy and support your people, and Susan, as you say, truly pay it forward. And Dan, all you've done for being vulnerable, it's just all these lessons are something that will change the life of business for people. And we at WBC are grateful. Thank you so much.